Overrun with paranormal activity and brimming with dark histories, these haunted hospitals and asylums have one thing in common: the ghosts of the past still linger in their halls. So let's count down 5 haunted hospitals. Taunton State Hospital was opened in April 1854 and was originally known as the State Lunatic Hospital at Taunton. The hospital was the second one in the area after one was built at Worcester, and was created to accommodate the rising numbers of patients within the state. The hospital became quite large during its expansion period from 1870 to 1906, and included many separate buildings from the main structure. These included crisis centres, sick wards, juvenile facilities and group homes. The hospital's main building was abandoned in 1975, and then in 1999 the main dome of the administration building collapsed, perhaps setting misfortunes for the building into motion. In 2006 a large fire broke out in the central building, and the parts affected by the blaze were levelled. Further demolition work then began in 2009 and ending in early 2010. During this work, most of the original features such as the vintage plumbing and the original iron gates were sold to various companies across the US. Today the main building is all but gone, but there are various accompanying buildings on the grounds which are still present. Since 1994 the property was added to the National Register of Historic Places. One of the hospital's most famous patients was Jane Toppin, a serial killer who confessed to having murdered at least 31 people while working as a nurse, and yet, according to some of the stories, the people who ran Taunton State Hospital may have been even more terrifying than many of the criminally insane patients it housed. Rumours persist that some of the doctors and nurses would take unwilling patients into the basement and use them to conduct satanic rituals, and in its later years both patients and doctors reported feeling a tremendous sense of unease when approaching the door to the basement. Reports exist of a shadow man who would crawl on the walls and watch the patients. Unlike most other hospitals, Stockton Hall began life as a stately manor home until World War I, when it was taken over and used by American forces as a place for injured soldiers to rest and recuperate. It was used again during World War II as a military hospital, and has been used in a similar manner ever since, including as an American military hospital during the Gulf War. The intimidating building was abandoned in 1995, and multiple cases of arson rendered it unusable again. Stories exist of one ghost in particular haunting the grounds, a sobbing spirit of a young girl whose presence has been reported by various people who have stayed at the building. She is said to haunt one specific bedroom more than others, with numerous people claiming to have been awoken at exactly 4:30 in the morning to see the spectral girl standing at the foot of the bed. The story continues that she is apparently the ghost of a servant girl who was murdered by the son of the man who owned Stockton Hall before it became a military hospital. Waverly Hills was originally a 2-story wooden building that was opened in 1910. However, the building you see today was constructed in 1926. It served as a tuberculosis hospital throughout the early to mid 20th century, a time when the disease was at its worst. It's believed that as many as 63,000 patients died there. The death toll, as well as the supposed mistreatment and questionable experimental procedures on patients, are all recipes that may be behind one of the most haunted buildings in the whole of the US. In 1910, a wooden 2-story hospital was built on the site, which was the highest elevated hill in southern Jefferson County, but with tuberculosis rampant in the area, the building wasn't big enough to house all of the patients, and so a new building was constructed in 1924, and the new Waverly Hospital opened in 1926. The Waverly Hills Sanatorium has built quite the reputation over the years as more and more people are allowed to investigate the premises. This has thrown up some incredible evidence over the years. It's featured on such shows as Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters. A figure has been captured on a thermal imaging camera that shows it walking across the hall. There are vast amounts of varying reports, including full-bodied apparitions, shadows, sudden cold spots and disembodied voices among many others. At the main entrance, the ghost of an old woman has often been seen. Sometimes she runs out the front door. Her hands and legs are in chains and spectral blood drips from her wrist and ankles. She cries for help before she disappears into thin air. Many have seen a little girl on the 3rd floor who is also known as Mary. Some say that she plays with a ball. Others have only heard the ball bouncing on the floor or down the stairs. This ball bouncing has also been attributed to a little boy, but the little girl seems the spookiest. One witness said that he encountered a little girl who wasn't normal. She kept saying that she has no eyes. He was so terrified that he refused to enter the building again. Some have seen the child peering out of the 3rd floor windows. Room 502. The nurse's station is perhaps the most notorious and frightening room of all. Supposedly, people have jumped to their deaths from this room. Others have seen spectral images floating in the windows and heard disembodied voices say, "Get out." The Old Changi Hospital is a former hospital in Changi, Singapore. It was built back in 1935 as part of the old Changi military base. During the occupation of the Japanese, the compound was used by the Japanese secret police as a prison and torture camp. After the end of World War II, the building was again a hospital, and remained so until 1997 when it was replaced by the Changi General Hospital. It stood in poor condition ever since. The building is now haunted by its past, with Japanese soldiers, people that were executed and the patients that died here. Apparitions of an old man have been seen walking down the corridors, and a woman has been seen walking through the rooms. The spirits of children are known to haunt the old children's ward, and the ghosts of bloody Japanese soldiers have also been seen. Loud bangs and unexplained screams are also a common occurrence. In the Venice Lagoon between Venice and Lido sits the small island of Poveglia, inhabited since 421, when mainlanders fled to seek refuge from the invaders. Poveglia's population began to dwindle centuries later, and by the 14th century the island was completely abandoned. As with many small islands in Europe during the plague outbreak in the 14th century, the island became a quarantine colony. Many locals were sent here to die. Their dead infected bodies would be burned on giant pyres. This was also the case in 1630 when the Black Death swept through Venice. The distance from the mainland meant that sufferers would not only be out of sight and out of mind, but a safe distance away from those who had yet to contract the plague, the fatal disease that left its victims with boils and rotting tissue. For those who look carefully, there is still a number of plague pits littered all over the island, giant graves where the bodies were dumped quickly after death with the hopes of keeping the disease from spreading to the doctors and nurses. The site was apparently used as a mental asylum during the 1800s, however many sources state that is simply not the case. Stories persist though of ill treatment and experimental procedures being carried out. During the 1930s, a doctor is believed to have committed suicide, jumping to his death from the bell tower, though some believe he was pushed by an unseen force. From the mid-20th century up until 1975 when it was closed, Poveglia Hospital was used as a geriatric centre. Today the whole island is abandoned, and it's believed that many locals dare not step foot on the island for fear of being cursed. Fishermen also refuse to fish in the area for fear of dragging up human remains. The ghosts of the patients and victims of disease are said to haunt the island and its buildings. Voices and screams are often heard, with EVPs often being captured. Dark shadows are often witnessed and possessions have been reported. So that was 5 haunted hospitals. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more countdown videos.